I knew that we wouldn't lose to England twice, and I've been able to play a couple of games against England where I feel like I'm really confident and comfortable in what I'm doing. And yeah, I remember her looking over to me and saying, "You're up," and I was just standing in the little rolling box like, holy. Reflecting on that injury, I fully believe that because my mental health and my mental capacity at the time was quite low, I fully think that was a massive contributing factor to me actually doing my knee. It's a drive that I have done a million times in my life. There's lots of other things happening at the time. I knew I probably wasn't at my strongest either. I felt very light. I didn't feel like I was an athlete. So it didn't surprise me that I did that injury. Obviously, it was a real shock to the system.
Hello, and welcome back to The Sporting Scoop, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the lives of sport's biggest trailblazers. In today's episode, I chatted to Kiera Austin, Melbourne Vixens player and Australian Diamond number 180. Starting her career with the Giants before moving south to the Melbourne Vixens in 2022 following a season-ending ACL injury, Kiera has been able to achieve some of the highest highs after rough times. Join me, Georgia Doyle, as we chat about her early career playing alongside some of the game's biggest names, how she felt underprepared going into her first ever Diamonds Test series, and how her season-ending knee injury changed her path and set her up for a career trajectory she never could have imagined. Welcome back to the Sporting Scoop podcast. My name's Georgia, and this morning I'm joined with Kiera Austin, a player from the Melbourne Vixens and Australian Diamonds. How are you this morning, Kiera?
Very well, thank you, Georgia.
Excellent. So we're going to have a bit of a deep dive into your sort of netball journey today. So let's start off back in the sort of very early days of your, I guess, elite, semi-elite career at the Netball World Youth Cup back in 2017. Lots of the players that you played with back then, like yourself, are now also playing in the Suncorp Super Netball. What do you remember of that tournament over in Botswana all those years ago?
Goodness, I couldn't even remember what year I went over, but I feel like the World Youth Cup was my first sort of real taste into what netball could give me. It was something that was brought up in our underage national camps for such a long time, and I don't think I personally didn't fully understand the magnitude of what it was, but I knew that I really wanted to get there. And I actually didn't make, there was a touring team that went to Fiji a couple months before, and I didn't make that team. So I thought, oh, that's my chance is gone. And it was the first year that the Giants had an affiliation with Canberra to do what was called the ANL competition. So all I wanted to do was just really enjoy that sort of campaign, and I probably had one of my funnest years of netball that year. And yeah, I was stoked to actually get picked in the team, and the culture over there was amazing. The fans and the crowd and everyone just got so into the games, and it really gave me an appreciation for what the sport was and what it can give to people in a country like Botswana. But yeah, I remember coming second, and I remember the grand final, but I was stoked to be part of that team.
Yeah, it must be nice when you sort of, as you said, when you initially don't make that first cut, but then obviously, as you said, you enjoyed your netball through the rest of that year, and then that ended up getting you into the team. It just shows that quite often if the stuff on the side is working well, then often the netball just sort of falls into place for you as well. So after that year, you then got your first full-time contract with the Giants, as you said, after that year playing in the ANL. Can you remember what that call was like from Julie Fitzgerald letting you know that you were going to be a fully contracted member of the team?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was obviously in Sydney at the time, and I was driving back from a shopping centre. And for whatever reason, my mum and myself were in two separate cars, but she was driving in front of me and I was driving behind, and I didn't have a Bluetooth car, so I just had to answer and put my phone on speaker as it was in a handheld thing, but
yeah,
it didn't have a Bluetooth connection. And I remember being like, oh my God, what have I done? I'm in trouble. And I remember answering it, and obviously she told me the really exciting news, and it just didn't seem like it was something on my radar. There was already 3 shooters in the team, so I was going in to fill that sort of wing attack, goal attack role. But yeah, I was just so stoked and surprised. And I remember hanging up and just like screaming in my car, and I usually never tell my mum anything. She's a bit loose-lipped. And when we parked and when we got back home, I said, Mum, I have to tell you this, but you promise you cannot tell anyone. And I told her, and she was ecstatic for me. So yeah, it was a very memorable day.
And you talk about coming in and playing that sort of wing attack, goal attack role. We see you mostly at goal attack these days, but especially those early days at the Giants, you did play a bit more wing attack. As you were coming up through that New South Wales pathway, were you very much that sort of split player across the line, or did you spend a lot more time either at goal attack or at wing attack?
I played most of my juniors as a centre wing attack. So all my Saturday netball, I played in wing attack. My junior reps, it wasn't until I was in the 15 rep division that I transferred into goal attack, purely because my coach told me that I was too tall and too lazy. And she might say that I'm uh, hardening the words a little bit, but that was what my mind remembered. But it's very true. I would just stick my arms up and hopefully get a few intercepts. So yeah, I think it was the right move for me to go into goal attack. And I didn't actually make my first ever under 17 state team. And I played schoolgirls nationals as a centre. So when I eventually made the 17s in my top age, it was my first time playing as goal attack. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, what's she going to be like? So
Mm.
yeah, it was a later transition, I would say. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I was in centre.
Yeah, as you said, it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot more common for players to sort of transition from goals to the mid-court because they get eventually too short to keep playing in goals. It's not very often, especially so late, like you said, that you see that transition the other way. Had you always sort of enjoyed shooting? What was it that sort of made them realize that, oh, you could actually do that role? Because shooting, I feel like, is one of those sort of talents people either have it or they don't. It's not necessarily something you can coach like a lot of the other sort of netball positions out there.
Yeah, I wasn't, I'd say I wasn't overly thrilled to shoot. I very vividly remember being at the Meadowbank courts in Sydney one Saturday, and the coach I was talking about saying, oh, Kiera, put up a few shots. And I knew exactly what her intentions were. And I was like, no, I don't want to do
No.
it. But I don't necessarily think it was the position. It was more the extra effort that had to go into
Mm.
practicing. But I think once I had a couple of games there and I understood that I could still have that sort of centre wing attack mindset where I can defend really hard. I know how
Mm.
to feed a little bit better. I think I started to enjoy the position a little bit more. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I was overly thrilled to go there, but I'm stoked that I'm, yeah, definitely a shooter now. There's a lot of pressure that comes with it, but I think you learn it along the way how to deal with it.
And that's it. You've definitely made that goal attack position your own. There's no doubt about that. And you talk about coming into that Giants team being that sort of fourth shooter, more filling that wing attack role. You played with some incredible players at that Giants lineup for those first couple of years. Got Joe Harton, Caitlin Bassett, Susan Pettit just in that shooting end. How much sort of did you learn off them in those first couple of years being part of a team with such iconic players?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky to have the talent around me that I had. And I think it was a good time to have those people in my life. They were obviously very mature athletes who had a lot of experience. And I was quite young and fresh coming in and didn't really know what to expect. So I took a lot out of them as people, but I also made some really good friendships in, Susan Pettit and Caitlin Bassett. I think for some reason I just clicked with them really well, and they even came to my wedding. So it's nice that we still have that sort of friendship, but all of them have been, yeah, really pivotal in my journey. And I try to think, I wouldn't change how my journey has been, and I definitely wouldn't, I was sitting on the bench for a big chunk of it, but I wouldn't have changed that because I learned how to deal with that sort of, journey, but also learned a lot in the sitting and just watch well.
Yeah, so I think it's important that players have that ability to sort of, yeah, just sit and learn and especially have those more experienced players around them to be able to take on that not only netball advice, but the life advice as well. And I know when I've been chatting to a few of the other players as part of this series, we've all sort of said that there's so many netballers out there that aren't just great netballers, they're great people. And I certainly think that's something we're very lucky to have in our sport is people that, yeah, just want the best for everybody, regardless of the scenario.
Yes, absolutely agree.
as well
Absolutely.
as as well as playing with some of those awesome players, you've also had some pretty impressive coaches throughout your career so far. As you said, started under Julie, then you moved over to the Vixens where you now got Simone and then Stacey in that Diamonds environment. If you had to sort of pick one or two things that each of those coaches have added to your game, what would you say they could be?
Oh gosh, one or two things.
Or more if you like, up to you.
I think, when I was at Giants, it was there were sometimes hard parts, but very good parts of it as well. And I think Julie was obviously, she saw something in me, and I would never have thought I could be an SSM player and playing wing attack. I would never have thought that I was good enough to do that. So I'll always be incredibly grateful that she gave me my first sort of look in. And it really is that because she played me in wing attack, that probably helped me quite a bit at Diamonds as well, that I could cover those two positions. So
Mm.
I'll always be grateful for that aspect of my journey. And I think since moving down to the Vixens, there's something about the Vixens and Simone that the normal standard is here and then their standards is here. And I've always been someone that's been really driven by wanting to do the best for the people around me. So if they're asking this of me, then I've got to get to, even further up here. And it's a competitive environment at the Vixen. So you're not just sitting and happy with what you're doing. You're constantly wanting to get better and to do better for the people around you. So I think she's always demanded more from me. And sometimes you can take that as in like, oh, I am doing well, like just appreciate me. But it really is what an athlete needs to keep growing. And I think Stacey's quite similar in that sense. Like, I've had incredible athletes at the Diamonds that I've learnt from. Steph Wood has been incredible as being a mentor, and I sat quite a bit on the bench at Diamonds, but like I'm starting to get my shot now. And again, I would not have appreciated playing the Diamonds and learning from the people around me unless I had sat on the bench. So I think, everyone has given me something slightly different, but all of them have backed me in and thought the best of me and saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. And just having that moment where you think that they see that potential, and then you can understand that, yes, if they see that, then it must be there, and I can go out there and try and give it on court for them. So yeah, all very different coaches, though, I will say that.
Yeah, I think it's a really great, so you've got that you have so much exposure to all those different coaches during your career, because as you've said, while they've each obviously seen something in you, they're also then able to bring different aspects out of you in your game as well. And I think that just helps us to grow and become better players. So it's a really important thing to get that exposure with lots of different things out there. You talk about sitting on the bench a little bit in those sort of early days of your Diamonds career before now sort of really breaking into that lineup now that someone like Steph has retired. That first exposure you got to the Diamonds environment, correct me if I'm wrong, was the tour that Caitlin Bassett actually broke her arm over in England. You got sort of thrown in as a last minute replacement, flown across the globe to England. Can you remember anything about that sort of first call up to that environment?
Yes, I have a very funny story about getting that call up. I had just met my husband. He was just, a random guy at the time,
Yeah.
and I was friends for the first time and having a couple of drinks over dinner. And I remember getting a phone call from Lisa Alexander, and I just picked my phone and left the room. And Sam and all the mates were like, "Oh, you got to go check on her." And he's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got to go to England tomorrow." He's like, "What?" I was like, yeah, they want me to fill in for the Diamonds. There's been an injury. And he was like, "Oh my God, okay, should we go?" And I said, "No, make me another drink." Like,
Celebrations.
I was so excited, and I could not believe it. Like, I think I'd only played one game at goal attack at SSN the year before, and it was the prelim.
Mm.
And I don't know what Lisa Alexander saw in me, but I was ecstatic to go over there. And when I got there, I remember everyone being so welcoming, telling me the little sort of rules behind the scenes that I needed to follow and to make sure I was doing all the one percenters. And I wasn't initially meant to sit on the bench, but then there was a concussion, there was a broken arm, and there was something else that happened. So I ended up sitting on the bench. I had no idea what the warm up was fumbling my way through it. And I remember sitting on the bench being like, "Do not put me on, I'm not ready."
No, no.
Yeah, but I was just so excited to be there. And yeah, then COVID hit, so it wasn't until 20
Mm.
had a little taste again for the Diamonds and actually debuted in that series. But that was a very tricky series.
Yes, that COVID one was sort of, I think, one that sort of lives on in lots of people's memories for various reasons. Obviously, being a Constellation Cup that we lost for a first one for a while, and then Stacey's first series, we had lots of debuts in that one as well. So, how have you found your journey from that? Yeah, I guess that first Diamond Series where you made your debut and sort of got thrown into it again, quite sort of fresh. I think you started your first test, which doesn't happen super often in your debut. Normally you sort of eased into it. How was that series, obviously, compared to being an anomaly compared to the normal series that you now go out and have?
Oh, it was crazy. It was hectic. We went over there for 2 weeks quarantine, and a little part of me knew that I would probably be starting. Steph
Mm.
was injured, Gretel, I think, was pregnant with Bobby. So there was just an opportunity. And I did everything in my power to feel ready, but it was certainly at a point in my career where I probably actually didn't really love the sport. I wasn't loving the environment I was in at the time. And that happens. Like sometimes you just the values don't align, and things just don't feel like they're actually gelling. And I remember playing in those 4 games, feeling not prepared, remembering, holy, this is what international netball is, having several moments like that on the court, and probably actually not having a lot of confidence, really. So I think we only got one win out of the
Mm.
four over there. And yeah, then I did my ACL in round 1 of that year, and I didn't get back into the Diamonds fold until the Commonwealth Games. So yeah, it was a weird debut series. I definitely didn't feel probably ready at the time, but again, everything happens for a reason,
Mm.
and for whatever reason, I debuted then, and yeah, I took a lot of learnings from it too.
Yeah, you talk about not sort of being in the best headspace, best environment leading up to that series, and then only a month or so later, you then did your knee in that round one game in Adelaide. How did if you were already in a bit of a rough space, how did that knee injury then sort of compound that, and how did you then sort of figure out that you know, oh, I've got to pick myself up and move along and try and get this rehab going, even if you weren't necessarily feeling like you're in the best space mentally?
Yeah, I reflecting on that injury, I fully believe that because my mental healthing, my mental capacity at the time was quite like low, I
Mm.
fully think that was a massive contributing factor to me actually doing my knee. It's a drive that I have done a million times in my
Mhm.
life. There's lots of other things happening at the time. I knew like I probably wasn't at my strongest either. I felt very light, like I didn't feel like I was an athlete. So it didn't surprise me that I did that injury. Obviously, it was a real shock to the system. But yeah, I remember just knowing it happened. I knew straight away that I had done my ACL. My partner was at the game, and I remember seeing him come into the change rooms, and he's never looked so petrified in his life. He didn't know what to do. And I
Oh.
get my phone. I rang dad because I knew dad would be the most upset. My whole family was together. And yeah, Emily, my sister, was bawling her eyes out. I hadn't even cried yet. And dad's like, you might have just twisted your knee. And I said, no, it's gone. Like it's gone. But it definitely was a moment for me where I was like, right, I want to get back. I think, I can't remember the number of days until the Games. It was one of the first things that my husband now said to me. And it was definitely topsy-turvy, the rehab. I started running at 3 months. I probably wasn't strong enough to start running, so I didn't run again until 7 months. And then I played my first game back at 10 months against Giants in Sydney. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think when I put my mind to it, it started to really, go on the upward trajectory. But yeah, I wouldn't wish an ACL upon anyone, but I've learned to love that it's happened to me, and what it's taught me along the way.
For sure. I think, as you said, that sort of mental side of it potentially contributing to the injury a little bit. I seem to recall, I think it was Kelsey Brown said something similar when she did her knee as well, having come back from the World Cup over in Liverpool. She just felt like her head wasn't in it. And then it was, yeah, a few weeks after getting back from that she did it. So yeah, certainly an interesting comment, knowing that you're not the only elite netballer who said something along those lines when they've suffered such an injury like that. And it was towards the end of that year that you then made that shift up to the Vixens. How much of a difficult decision was that for you, knowing that you'd come through the whole New South Wales pathway and then into the Giants, but then weren't necessarily loving the environment as much as you'd hoped to be throughout those sort of the year or so leading up to that shift?
I actually think it was an easier decision than what I thought.
Mm.
I have two parents. Like my dad left home when he was 21. He's from Scotland. My mum was traveling for majority of her life. Like I've had parents that were quite nomadic and loved seeing the world. So moving to Melbourne was like the closest thing for me to moving overseas
Yeah.
and seeing the world. So that part didn't scare me. I feel like I've always looked at the Vixens, and I feel like a lot of people would probably say the same thing. You look at the Vixens and you see really high standards. You see
Mm.
athletes at centres. They breed very good netballers down in Victoria, so it didn't feel like a scary thing to move down here and to join this team. If anything, I felt so lucky and so excited that they were keen to have me because I was still injured at the time. It was kind of like doing my first like real professional job interview. It wasn't even an interview. It was more just like, oh, why do you want to be at the Vixens? And yeah, I remember just being so excited when I found out that they were keen to have me. And I remember Simone saying, oh, is it okay if the leadership group rings you? And the
Yeah.
leadership group at the time was Joe, Kate, Liz, Keddy, like
Yeah.
nearly.
Half the bloody
Um,
team.
yeah, so I remember them ringing me, and yeah, I was a nervous ball of everything when I moved down there for the first time. But yeah, it's probably the best thing I've ever done for my netball.
Yeah, you talk about, all those four players that you've mentioned, you would have played with most of them in some capacity before that shift down to the Vixens. How was it then coming into that team that is already so established, has such a good culture, such a good sort of standard? How was it for you trying to sort of fit into that, even though you had played with a few of the players at some point along the way?
Yeah, it wasn't hard, but it was something that probably held me back a bit. When I first moved down, I just wanted to fit in. I moved into state. I moved my husband into state.
Mhm.
I was coming back from an injury. There were so many other things in my mind that I just wanted to fit in, and I just wanted to do what everyone else wanted from me. And I think that's probably been the biggest shift in my game the past couple of years, is that I've been here for a couple of years now. I've come back from my injury. I no longer feel like I need to fit in. Like I want to challenge the people around me and say, I need this from you. And if you need that from me, then I can do that for you. It's more of like a symbiotic relationship rather
Mm.
than person benefiting and me just, trying to fit. So I think that's been the biggest shift. But certainly when I moved down, I was just like, whatever you need from me, I'll do it.
Yeah. No, all the Vixens girls, I'm sure, yeah, that would have definitely helped having played with them before, and they're used to sort of having a few new people come in. It seems they don't often have a big influx of new players at once, but there's usually a few little tweaks and changes. I'm sure that would have made it easy for them to sort of welcome in someone like yourself to the team as well. So I reckon let's pivot to some of the diamond stuff now. You've already mentioned sort of that relationship you've got with Steph, and how much she sort of shaped you in that diamonds environment. You were part of those two winning tours for the Netball World Cup and then the Commonwealth Games. Let's start with the Commonwealth Games. What do you recall about that sort of first big tournament that you went to with the diamonds cohort?
I felt like a fish out of water, I reckon. I remember getting that phone call and just like bursting into tears. They thought I hung up on the phone. I was doing that ugly, like crying with no actual voice cry. It just meant so much to me to not only not prove to myself, but to show myself that I can play the netball that I was capable of. It was my first season starting entirely as a goal attack, and I was really proud of myself. And I
Mm.
remember finding out the team and just being like, holy heck, like how am I playing netball with all of these people? I just felt so lucky. And going over there, I just remember soaking up every moment. It was a little bit different than what you'd expect because it was during COVID times, but Joey Weston was my roommate. We would go up and get a coffee from the team experience room together every day. And I remember ironing my opening ceremony shirt because I was so excited. I wanted to look so crisp and clean, and then it's over in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So there was lots of moments where I was just having a pinch me moment, but whenever I got to play, I was just, yeah, whatever I need for the team. I was glad that I could play the wing attack and goal attack role because I definitely didn't feel like super ready to be like the impact player or if there was an injury, I would be like, okay, like this is going to be a big effort from me. But I was so happy to just jump on and almost provide a bit of like relief for the wing
Mm.
attacks and the team. And yeah, Kara came on in that final and just absolutely ripped it up. And I think everyone just played their role so well in that team. And it's so hard to find a team where everyone is happy with their individual role and no one's upset or
Mm.
trying to challenge that too much. Like everyone just knew what their role was and rolled with it. And it was such a successful team to be a part of.
Yes, you certainly talk about, that really sounds like that sort of just emulation of that mantra that you guys have got, which is that sisters in arms, which is just everybody's got the best intentions for the team at heart. No one's going to gatekeep any information from anyone. You all just want the team to succeed, whether that be with you on court, with you playing an impact role, with you coming off the bench, whatever it might be. And I think that's been the key to the Diamonds' success over the last couple of years for sure. So you talked about that sort of you didn't quite feel ready to be that impact player at that tournament, but then fast forward 12 months later, you were probably the biggest, had to come on and have the biggest impact in a game you've probably had in your career in that World Cup gold medal game. How did you feel when Stacey looked over at you on the bench, was like, all right, keep your on, it's your time to go out there and then show us what you've got?
I was so nervous. But I do remember feeling much more prepared for the World Cup than I did come games. Like I had a whole other season under my belt. I still have quite a bit of niggles with my knee. The day before the World Cup started, the team doctor fully aspirated it. So it was
Yeah.
fat at the time. Probably things like little things that happen behind the scenes that no one really knows about. But yeah, I remember being in that tournament thinking, yep, if you need me, I'm ready to go. And I remember that Jamaican game was like our grand final for us. I don't think we
Mm.
anticipated playing them in a semi. We always thought we would play them in a grand final. So those girls that played in that game were just phenomenal because I think all of us, even from the bench, even from the crowd, our families were more worried about that game than the final. I knew that we wouldn't lose to England twice, and I've been able to play a couple of games against England where I feel like I'm really confident and comfortable in what I'm doing. And yeah, I remember her looking over to me and saying, "You're up," and I was just standing in the little rolling box, like, "Holy!" But yeah, I went on. I was just like, demand the ball. And I remember demanding the ball from Paige in my first drive in the circle, and the ball went in. So I was like, great, let's go. And I didn't expect the score to blow out as much as it did. But yeah, I think we were just the fresh legs that finished the tournament off for some of the girls that just worked their butts off.
Yeah, I was actually over at the tournament in Cape Town, and yeah, I remember going sitting down at that Jamaica game. I was like, if we can get through this, I think they'll be okay. That's all we need to do because, as you've said, you're not the type of team that's going to lose to the same team twice, just like happened at the Com Games the year previously. You lost that first game to Jamaica, but no way in hell if you could help it was that going to be happening again. Steph retired after that 2023 World Cup game, which has sort of left you as being one of the sort of the senior goal attacks within the Diamonds team. How have you found that transition to now being more of a leader in that shooting lineup?
Yeah, Steph's role in that Diamonds team will be lasting for a very long time. I'm so grateful that she was there when I was coming through and I got to learn everything I did, not just as an athlete on court, but how she managed herself off the court. It's really hard to articulate her sort of impact in that space, but she was phenomenal for that. So I hope for myself that I can sort of be that to Soph Dwyer and whoever else comes through in that goal attack role. But yeah, I don't necessarily see myself as like the senior goal attack. I think the Diamonds is literally the best of the best athletes coming together, and you need to be able to be happy being on the court and doing what is needed of you, but then also happy to be coming off and to have a different dynamic on there. So if I get the start, that's amazing, and I want to do everything I can and work my butt off for as long as I can. But I would love for the Diamond Spoon environment and it is, and it's something that you constantly have to work on and build on, where anyone can come on and anyone can do their job. So whenever I get a chance to go out there and do my thing, I'll go out there with full intensity. But yeah, there's so much still that I want to achieve at the Diamonds and another sort of Com Games and World Cup coming up where I've got heaps of things that I'd love to achieve. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I think but not only at the Diamonds, but international netball in general. I think the days of the starting seven are gone. Everyone's got such depth, not only within the 12 that they name for match day, but within their wider squads. So I think it's really exciting to see because it means you'll tune in to watch a game and you never quite know who's going to start, which is not only exciting for the people at home to be watching, but it's got to be good to be keeping you guys on your toes as well, I would imagine.
Yes, definitely. I think gone is the day of the starting seven, and the teams that are using their benches well are the teams that are succeeding. Yeah, different.
Yes, it's a nice change, I think. I think lots of people are glad that netball's turned that way. So let's finish up this morning by chatting a little bit about what you get up to outside of netball. Pretty much every netballer out there always talks about how it's so important to have that balance between what you're doing off the court and then what you're doing on the court, and that's what then makes the netball happen essentially when you're out there. So what are the sort of things that you like to do to keep your cup full on a day off, or if your netball is in a bit of a rut?
Yeah, I very much believe in having a life away from netball. I actually like after netball's training or a game's finished, I don't follow really anything on social media, so it's still a safe place for me. So you know, relaxing on your phone, but planting things. I love plants, and my in-laws just came down and helped me replant my backyard. But I actually just decided to go back to uni this year, and I did an undergrad in medical science, but it took me 7 years, and I probably
Yeah.
couldn't tell you much of what I learnt. But I loved genetics when I did it, the genetics classes. So I've gone back to Melbourne Uni and I'm doing a master's in genomics and health. So I'm learning lots. I've made a couple of
Mm.
friends. They've come along to a few games. I don't necessarily know yet where I want to go with it. But I'm hoping that if I can find a passion along the way, whilst I'm doing it, then that's really exciting for me going forward. But yeah, I've loved it so far. It's definitely a little bit challenging learning how to study again. But yeah, it's been really a big change for me.
Yeah, I think it's that sort of areas, you know, not only study, but I think particularly sort of health related study or medical related study, something we see a lot of netballers go into. I feel like it's either that or teaching are probably the two most common things you see netballers out doing. So I'm not surprised that that's something you've ended up taking an interest in, because as you've said, it's something that's so important to have that balance between your netball life and then your personal life, especially as you start getting sort of higher up through netball and you've got not only your Vixens commitments, but your diamond stuff as well, just to have something to sort of remove yourself a little bit from that, and then making sure you're keeping those plants alive as well. Because did your hubby end up killing some while you were away on a last tour or something? Is that something I remember seeing on socials?
Yes, yeah. Well, look, I actually repotted the plant just before I left, so it might have been half my contribution, but it was 3 days later when I FaceTimed him and asked how the plant was going, and he said, "Oh, look, it's a little bit wilted," and I was like, "Oh, okay, show me." Just expecting like a little bit droopy, and it looked like bok choy, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, that's not a little bit droopy." So I had a crisis call with the mother-in-law, and they're all good now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Kiera. I really appreciate having a chat and your honesty and candidness for some of the topics that we've talked about today. Best of luck with the Vixens for the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll see you running around in a diamonds dress for some test series towards the end of the year.
Thanks, Georgia. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Kaurna people.